and towns in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom have survived many a travesty in their time, but only with the help of Link. But I want to see if these baby birds can fly without training wheels for once. Birds don't have training wheels. Exactly. So today I'm putting them to the test to see how well they would do on their own in an apocalyptic scenario. Could these places survive without the hero of time? I picked 11 settlements that I thought were established enough to warrant examination. So if you're like, I don't think you should have counted that place, or if you're gonna count this, then you should count that, make your own video. These are the ones I picked. So let's establish the rules of our hypothetical scenario. In this apocalyptic situation, Link 100% of the game up until the Ganondorf fight, then got to the edge of the depths and had a heart attack. So everything in the towns are as they are when you've beaten all of the side quests. With Link no longer being an issue, Ganondorf casts the land into permanent darkness with hordes of monsters roaming wild. There would be an eternal resetting blood moon in the sky that functions as it does in the game, respawning every obtainable item, weapon, and monster, but every 24 hours since the blood moon never goes away. And in this scenario, Ganondorf doesn't have an interest in directly targeting, taking over, wiping out any of the villages. He's just chilling in Hyrule Castle. Maybe he got stuck on a particularly hard crossword. I don't know. That's what my apocalyptic scenario is. If you don't like it, make your own video. Finally, I'm interested in long-term survival here. I don't care if you can survive a month. I care if your great-grandkids can survive a month. I care if you can build a new society. How about that? But how exactly will we be deciding who's most fit to survive? Well, when researching apocalyptic survival techniques, I found that long-term survival needs can be boiled down to 5 basic categories. Number 1, shelter. What's your home base like? Is it fortified for safety? Do you have an escape route or safe room? Are there any fire hazards? Do you have hydro, wind, or solar power? Your living conditions play a major role in how you'll fare in the apocalypse. Number 2, and most important, water. All living beings need water to live, and you can survive longer without food than without water. Now, in a real-world scenario, having a way to purify the water is also very important. But since water purification isn't a topic introduced in the game, we're going to count any freshwater source as potable. Number 3, food. How much food do you have access to? How perishable is it? Can it be preserved in some way? Do you have the means to safely prepare for consumption? Does it provide the nutrients you need? All important questions. Number 4, supplies. What you got? Do you have clothing and bedding to keep you warm or cool? Tools and weapons? A method of communication or navigation? What about things to start a fire? Cooking utensils? Building materials like wood and rope, or sewing supplies to make clothes or patch things up? Do you have extras like games, books, or anything else to help you not lose your mind? Good to think about. Number 5, skills. The citizens are as important as the stuff they have, and everything is useless if you don't know how to use it. What skills do the villagers bring to the table? Can they hunt, farm, or forage? Can they fight, cook, repair? How much do they know? There are many skills one can bring to the table, and skill diversity throughout the village should also be examined. Shelter, water, food, supplies, skills. SWFSS. Swoofs, swoofs. Those are the 5 categories our settlements will be graded on today. So without further ado, let's get grading. Zora's domain has 3 main entrances via land, but the main entryway doesn't have a gate and the other 2 are not guarded very well. Not only is it completely open from above, in fact I almost got swiped flying in, but the rooms themselves are quite exposed to the outside. However, they do have an escape route via the water, as well as a safe room that King Dorphin uses earlier in the game. And you can't say they don't have access to water. There's water inside, there's water outside, there's water in the surrounding areas. They're good. Which makes them good on food too, since Zora's diets consist mainly of fish with crabs thrown in there as well. They've got multiple water sources to get fish and crabs from, and the blood moon doesn't seem to affect anything underwater, so I'd say seafood is a pretty dang reliable food source in this apocalyptic world. Supply-wise, Zora's domain is the definition of style versus substance. Half this place is empty. Like, why build this entire area? For what? I'll give that they have a stove, several tools for making weapons, and books that look like they might be on stone tablets so as to not get the pages wet. And there are only 2 beds at the inn, but the Zoras sleep in the water anyway. But I can't help but feel like this palace is grossly misusing its space and could have a lot more. The palace has many guards that are amped to master their craft, led by Prince Sidon, who can fight himself. All these warriors make the domain's weapon maker quite useful as well. They're all obviously natural swimmers and fishers, and they care a good deal about preserving their history. They also have the skill of building, so they can make even more useless rooms. Zora's domain gets a 2 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 5 for food, a 2.5 for supplies, and a 3.5 for skills. Now to to jump to the first village most players find themselves, Lookout Landing. The place is pretty well protected, with high walls, lookout points, and guards at all gates. They also have a temperature-regulated underground shelter of sorts, with its own escape route that leads to the Castletown ruins. The outside is still prone to attacks from aerial monsters though, and being that close to Hyrule Castle feels dangerous. Even if Ganondorf wasn't actively trying to attack you. You get like gloom radiation from being too close to the source. They seem to be okay on water, as the town has numerous rivers and lakes, has a moat, a well to catch rainwater, and a water source that comes out of a grate to supply the bunker with water. Lookout Landing's shop sells a few edible goods, and they have a couple horses for desperate times, but I did some research and came to the conclusion that they're both lady horses, so they couldn't breed them in order to have a long-term supply of meat. So the villagers' main source of food is going to have to come from foraging for mushrooms and critters in the royal hidden passageway, which admittedly sucks. But Lookout Landing does have a lot of supplies, especially for being a newly set up town. They have a ton of books and maps, blankets and pillows, extra armor and clothing, torches, tools, an extensive kitchen, and zonite nether ore in the hidden passage. They have horses if they need to ride somewhere, and plenty of hay to feed them, and they have weapons, although one guard admits that they don't have enough weapons for everyone. All in all though, not too shabby. The fact that Lookout Landing has beings from all over Hyrule is both a help and a hindrance. The different diets would prove problematic, but their individual skills are useful, especially regarding their contributions to the fighting efforts. One of the Gerudo is even knowledgeable about specifically fighting monsters. The town also houses Pura and Joshua, who have vast knowledge in ancient technology in the depths, as well as a Hylian that knows a lot about Hyrule's people and places. They also have carpenters, a weaponsmith, and although their cook is currently away from Lookout Landing, I have faith that when faced with the apocalypse, he would hurry back. Lookout Landing gets a 4 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 2 for food, a 4 for supplies, and a 4 for skills. Okay, so since I hadn't 100% in the game, I did have a lot of unfinished business to attend to make this video. Like, these kids were sad their dad lost their shirt, so I had to get that, and then this dude needed a boat, so I went a million miles away and got that. And then I had help with tourism, so I went across Hyrule and did multiple races to get these gals to come back to the village. And then this guy was bummed because his wife was sad, so I went to Goron City to get an ingredient to make her favorite dish, and then she was too hot, so I had to cool her down, and then she made this flag. Cool. Please like this video. Anyway, Lurelin Village is relatively tucked away, with the ocean on one side and steep cliffs covering the village from side on the other side. Besides from above, there are 2 main routes to get to the village, with one of them being a narrow path with cliffs on either side for easy defending. However, the village itself consists of super exposed huts made of wood, making them highly flammable. They're also extremely spaced out, making communication between huts in case of an emergency difficult. They can use the well as a safe room, assuming that it hasn't filled up, as we've seen a monster using it as a secluded spot before, but they'd have to wait until it rained to get back out since there's no ladder. While the village may be on the ocean, the only drinkable water they have easy access to is a small pond in the village and any water collected by the well in town. They have bananas and palm fruits that grow nearby. They got a few lady cows that would give milk and perhaps meat, although both of those things would only last so long. Luckily, their diet consists mainly of fish, but while they know how to smoke it for better preservation, it would still be risky to go outside to catch more. As you might expect from a fishing town, the village has plenty of rope and baskets, a boat, and dinnerware and food preparation tools. They have clothes and bedding, though it looks like it's mostly for warm weather, with seemingly no supply preparation for cold weather. They also have several weapons lying around, plus enhanced weapon attachments. And for recreation, they have books and, I would say, spa materials, but it's a bring-your-own salt spa. Hate those BYOS spas. They also have a few zonite devices due to the Gerudo racers coming into town, but the only knowledge they have is what they've seen, which we know from the quest is limited. Everyone freaked out over the way I said Gerudos in my Which Super Smash Bros. Characters Have Been Kissed video, so I'll do my best to say Gerudo in this one. But man, if that got your panties in a twist, you'll love the fact that I pronounced Majora's Mask as Majora's Mask growing up. Should give it a little Spanish flair. I'll throw in an extra half point for the town dog, who is very good and could potentially help with tasks while not requiring a ton of extra food. The villagers have some experience building, especially since their town has been wrecked before and needed rebuilding. And they have fishers and clearly people who make baskets too. They also have a professional chef on the island known for being innovative with her dishes, which would be a luxury when your ingredients are limited. But they definitely lack fighters and could use some more diverse expertise as well. Lurelin Village gets a 2 for shelter, a 2.5 for water, a 4 for food, a 3.5 for supplies, and a 3.5 for skills. Okay, so at first I was like, oh man, Korok Forest would be an incredible place to camp out during the apocalypse if you're in Korok. It's shrouded in a fog that's impervious to outsiders. There are secret compartments in the Great Deku Tree for safe rooms. They have a secret passage out of the forest in case of emergency, and the land is super fertile and teeming with life. Like, sure, you'd have to be careful not to start a fire, but this place seems great. Then I remembered one little detail about this scenario. Permamoon. Permamoon means that plants can't perform photosynthesis. This means plant don't live. Not only this, but while the Korok Forest doesn't automatically get mucked up when the blood moon comes out, things did break when a huge source of gloom got into the Deku Tree's belly, rendering the Koroks paralyzed. Considering the Koroks aren't the biggest warriors, and the monsters can live and move throughout the fog that covers many adjacent areas of the forest, the risk of another gloom source getting into the Deku Tree is too great. No bueno. Looking past that, the Koroks at least have a somewhat decent water source. Water collects in several spots in the main area, which isn't a huge amount of water, but it's something. And they aren't too far off from a small lake, though they'd have to trek past monsters to get there. It is ambiguous if Koroks need to eat or not in this game. They're little tree people, so it's possible they just photosynthesize, in which case they would be as screwed as the tree. But one of the stores stocks up on many mushrooms, has a cooking pot in the middle, and the shopkeep describes the mushrooms as delicious. In Breath of the Wild, there's also a Korok who, in a riddle, describes apples as sweet, and in Wind Waker, a Korok says that they use the forest's fruits to make potions for Koroks. Regardless, to get enough mushrooms to feed all of the Koroks, they would have to go outside of their safety zone and face monsters, which they're not at all equipped to do. Be it via photosynthesis or treacherous journeys for their every meal, it's clear they don't have a reliable food source. They don't have a whole lot of supplies either. They have a couple weapons, though I don't even know if they themselves can use them, and there are like 2 beds total in this tree. Even this dude's secret room is just a bunch of flowers. Korok's main skill is hiding. They can hide like crazy. They can also forage, but while Hestu is shown to have some fighting skills in Zelda Age of Calamity, the majority of Koroks are absolutely terrified of monsters. So honestly, they're way better on the defensive than the offensive, and out in the rest of Hyrule, they don't necessarily fare well either. Korok Forest gets a 2 for shelter, a 3.5 for water, a 1 for food, a 2 for supplies, and a 2 for skills. Rito Village has the advantage of being safe from every monster aside from airborne ones, since they live on an island with the bridge to the mainland cut off. However, there are airborne monsters, and monsters can carry monsters. And once they get to the island, the houses themselves aren't very protective at all. And it's all made of wood, so God forbid it catches on fire. One pro though is that the island has small windmills that could potentially be used to power things, and the island gets plenty of wind, making them quite useful. They have access to plenty of water, seeing as they're both surrounded by a lake and have several bodies of water nearby, with containers to have it accessible within the village too. The Rito eat multiple foods, but have to leave the island to get most things. They would potentially be able to fish in the lakes around them, but that means leaving the village itself to do so. They definitely get points for stockpiling food, but one of the Ritos said their food stockpiles could be better, that the kids of the village eat a lot, and she's always looking to buy more food from you. They also stockpile supplies, and she mentions having an abundance of kindling and flint, which is more important than you might think in a survival situation, since fires can be used for communication, exemplified by the distress signal that this Rito sends out when he needs help. Around the village, you can find sewing materials, plenty of cloth, hammocks, rope, cooking utensils, and warm clothing. In addition to their belongings, the Rito are also an asset in and of themselves. Many of them are warriors, and Tulin, the new Sage of Wind, lives there alongside his father, who can make bows. They also have rebuilding and repair skills, as well as a good sense of responsibility and organization. The children of the village have also previously proven themselves to be highly useful when the village experienced a blizzard and the adults had to leave. One of them makes different types of arrows, one is super into cooking, and all of them show a passion for working hard. Overall, Rito Village gets a 3 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 3 for food, a 4 for supplies, and a 4 for skills. Tarrey Town sucks. Where to start? They're surrounded by water with one entrance into town via land, but that entrance is not guarded at all. And it's a building town with materials right there. Build yourselves a gate, for Christ's sake. But even if they did, let's be 100% honest, this guy's totally gonna let in monsters anyway. They're also exposed to flying monsters coming in from above, but unlike the Rito, they can't defend themselves should this happen. They do have an escape route via the rails, but it would be hard to get everyone out of there quickly should they need to. They have a fountain in town and a lake beneath them, but they're gonna get got by a monster on the way to the fountain outside, let alone on the long journey to the lakeside. Regarding food, there's no food. There's no food! They have exactly 4 dazzle fruits, which is an afternoon snack for 2 people. Moving on to supplies. Okay, I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, or this is even like a common thing, but I remember one time when I was a kid, my mom took me with her to look at house models in this neighborhood that was like just model homes. Like they were all practically empty furniture-wise, and I think it was maybe for seeing layouts more than anything, but it was a weird vibe. And that's what Tarrey Town is. There's like nothing in these homes. Sure, they have a few books and some clothes and blankets, some wooden monster statues, you know, the essentials. Most importantly, they have zonite devices located at the nearby racetrack if they don't get eaten by monsters on the way there. You might think they get points because they have dogs, but they immediately lose those points because they don't feed those dogs because they have no food. As far as I'm concerned, the villagers can build, and one person has basic zonite knowledge. Then they have a town creep that's gonna let monsters in. Tarrey Town gets a 2.5 for shelter, a 3.5 for water, a 0 for food, a 2 for supplies, and a 2 for skills. Hateno Village is a lovely little spot that focuses on fashion and crops more than anything else. It doesn't have any definite walls, meaning that it is relatively open to enemy attacks, but they also have a complex underground system that attaches the various wells around the village, though there are monsters down there as well, making it not the safest. They have sturdy, non-flammable houses, 2 giant windmills that can provide wind-based power, and a potential safe room at Zelda's house. The whole village is pretty spaced out, however, so communication in times of emergency would be difficult. The Hateno villagers are not lacking in water, seeing as how there are a few ponds and lakes around them in addition to multiple wells they can collect rainwater in. Pre-apocalypse, the village has a ton of food. The townsfolk use their village's fertile soil to grow a variety of crops. There are cows, sheep, goats, cuckoos, dogs, a horse, a donkey, various fruit trees, the shop is stocked, and every house is stocked with supplies. The crops and animals will only last so long post-apocalypse, though. The soil can be fertile as all get out, but if it's a blood moon 24/7, those crops ain't growing. And after peeping the various animals' situations they got going on, I'm not sure how they're gonna breed with each other. However, there are various edible critters underneath the wells, the apples in the trees will constantly replenish due to the blood moon, and the guy with the cart is a fisherman, so he might be able to get some fish for the town. And that's a lot of steak in the meantime. Hateno is relatively well stocked in the supply department. Each house has a ton of supplies and books and whatnot, with many even having full kitchens, fireplaces, extra clothes and bedding, and some even having storerooms. Being the fashion capital of Hyrule, they have plenty of clothes, armor, fabric, and sewing supplies, and they even have little extra luxuries like drawing materials and personal hygiene products. The main thing they're lacking is weapons, with only improvisable weaponry like brooms or pitchforks. Hateno has skilled ranchers and farmers, and while the farmers wouldn't be able to grow anything above ground, it's possible they might figure something out below ground. But the monsters down there lead me to their biggest lack of skill, and that's in fighting. Hateno villagers are lovers, not fighters. I mean, they have a literal child guarding their gate. And one quest demonstrates that the townsfolk can't defend their crops against monsters by themselves. However, they clearly have a knowledge of making potions, they have a cheesemaker, which might mean a certain level of knowledge in other areas of food preservation, and above all, they have the ancient tech lab run by Robbie, who is extremely knowledgeable and even has a compendium database that has information on all creatures, monsters, materials, equipment, and treasure. And knowledge is power. Which is why it's also good that they have a teacher and a new generation of kids interested in learning. They've gotta learn how to fight though, because I don't know how they would stand a chance without it in their village. Hateno Village gets a 3.5 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 4 for food, a 4 for supplies, and a 3.5 for skills. The Gerudos are no strangers to emergency situations, and not only have high walls and heavily guarded entrances, but an entire underground shelter that's already been established. And this underground shelter is both climate controlled and non-flammable since everything is made of stone. And there's even an escape route to the outside in case of an emergency. The fact that they would still be able to interact and talk with one another if they needed to take shelter is huge. They also have a pre-established backup communication system via sending notes through the underground waterways. In addition, the Gerudos also have a rooftop aqueduct system that would allow both the distribution of water throughout the town and would also slightly cool the town by absorbing the stone building's heat. Although they're in the desert with no lakes or rivers nearby, the Gerudos draw water from a seemingly magical spring beneath the shrine atop their town. This appears to be an endless source of water and even runs down into the shelter, ensuring that even if they need to bunker up, they would still have access to water. On top of this, they already harvest ice from the nearby highlands, so if worse came to worse, they could still collect this ice to be melted for drinking water. But the magical endless spring is still probably the better bet. Their food situation, however, is slightly more grim. They start out with quite a bit of food, but the produce can only last so long, especially since they have extremely infertile ground for growing crops. If they were able to breed their sand seals, some of them are hard to get a good read of their gender, they would have a continuous supply of meat that they could smoke for preservation, but if they wanted anything else, they would need to travel elsewhere to get it. Plus, their sand seals would need to eat as well. The Gerudos are stocked up on supplies though. Weapons, well-stocked kitchens, training dummies, blankets, tarps, clothing, accessories that give all sorts of effects, tons of useful items in their shops, a hot air balloon, spa stuff, even plushies. In addition to all of this, the Valley of Silent statues attached to their shelter has zonite. The Gerudos currently in this town wouldn't know how to use it, as we know from the ones we run into elsewhere not knowing about it, but there are also other materials that can be mined there, as well as a magical light source. You still couldn't use this to grow crops because of the ground, but having potentially the only light in a world of indefinite nighttime would be good for something. The Gerudos are very skilled warriors, practicing their moves and staying vigilant at all times, so defense wouldn't be a problem. Not to mention they have the new Sage of Lightning on their side. They can also make weapons, accessories, and armor. They know how to smoke meat and have a chef that doubles as a teacher who wrote cookbooks and recipes for others to learn how to cook as well. Heck, the fact that they have a teacher and teach their youth is a huge pro. They're well versed in taming and riding sand seals and have 2 villagers who can prepare spa treatments, which are healing. There's only one huge problem, and while it feels bad to put under the skill category, I don't know where else it would go. They can't have babies with each other. A male Gerudo is born once every 100 years or so normally the Gerudos would leave the village to look for mates. This one couldn't even look at me. I don't know why. But even if they risk it and leave the village in search of a mate during an apocalypse, they would be hard-pressed to find one since all of the other villages would be on lockdown. They have one dude already in their jail cell, but it would only take 1 generation before that would become incestuous. So if we're talking long-term survival, continuing to reproduce would be their biggest obstacle. Gerudo Town gets a 5 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 3 for food, a 5 for supplies, and a 3 for skills. The Yiga Clan gets points for their hard-to-find, well-guarded base. There are 2 entrances that both have guards at the door, and you can even find disguised Yiga Clan members on the path up to the base. It's temperature-regulated, pretty roomy, and all things considered, a pretty safe spot. And it's literally right next to the depths, which for others might be considered dangerous, but the Yiga Clan has bases and methods of transportation in the depths, so I count it more as an escape route should they need to evacuate the base. It loses a point because it's not the homiest place to live. Like, I don't even know where they sleep. And good living quarters is important for keeping morale up. The other problem is that they chose to live in the friggin' desert nowhere near water, and they don't have a magical shrine well. I will grant them exactly 1 point for having access to nearby hydromelons. They're not gonna score much better on food either. 2 points for the massive number of bananas they've managed to accumulate, especially since bananas are relatively vitamin and mineral rich. There are worse foods to be stuck with. But also, they have no other food, and no way to plant any banana seeds in their base, so once they're out of food, they would need to rely on stealing it from others. The hideout has basics like rope, tarps, and wood to start fires, but the value mainly lies in the zonite weaponry that they have. Aside from that, the stash of things they have is nothing to sneeze at. They might be able to have a killer drum circle on a rainy day, but they don't have beds. Not great. As far as skills go, Yiga Clan members can all fight, teleport very short distances, and disguise themselves, which give them the ability to steal and sneak past enemies, and they're able to build and repair weaponry as well as navigate the depths. Aside from that, however, they don't have too many practical skills. And their conniving and selfish nature means that these guys, when put in an enclosed space with limited resources, will most definitely turn on each other, and that's a recipe for disaster. The Yiga Clan Hideout gets a 4 for shelter, a 1 for water, a 2 for food, a 2.5 for supplies, and a 3 for skills. Kakariko Village has 2 main entrances, both of which have a long stretch of road with high walls on either side that allow unwanted visitors to be seen from far away. So it's relatively secluded, though they don't have an actual gate, and they do lose a point for having a couple of Yiga Clan members right there. They have sturdy homes, a watermill which can provide power, and safe rooms both where the cuckoos lay their eggs and down a well, where there are even torches and a little food. The town is a bit spaced out, meaning they might have trouble communicating with one another should an emergency arise. Kakariko Kakariko has plenty of water with multiple bodies of fresh water both in and around the village. For food, they have various crops that they grow, though they couldn't plant more above ground after the apocalypse, and they have cuckoos and their eggs as well. There are also mushrooms and apples that grow around town, and even a bee's nest, which means they have access to honey, which is important because it can be preserved for extremely long periods of time. Their biggest source of food would likely be the apples, mushrooms, and eggs, since those foraging items replenish with the blood moon, which would be happening on a daily basis in the apocalypse, though it would still be relatively tough to feed the whole town on that alone. They also have sonke carp that are exclusive to Kakariko Village, so that would help a bit. It might not be pronounced sonke. I might be pronouncing that wrong. I might be pronouncing everything wrong. Leave me be. Where they lack a bit in food, they more than make up for in supplies, because all of the houses have a good amount of stuff in them. They have tons of extra clothes, blankets, cloth, and armor, endless books, maps, and charts, and even their own Zonite device dispenser. There are even recreational supplies, like paints and flower wreaths, which I had no idea what to do with. The people in Kakariko Village also have a wide variety of skills. Many of the Sheikah are extremely skilled fighters, and 2 of them even talk about developing new fighting techniques. The Zonai survey team being there also means that they have archaeologists, researchers, and even a gloom specialist, useful in the apocalypse. These people are extremely knowledgeable and know a lot about Zonai devices as well. Between them and the Sheikah, they would be quick to develop a new method of doing things in a new challenging world. Among the villagers are also farmers, seamstresses, and builders, since they built an extensive walkway system up to the ring ruins. Kakariko Village gets a 4 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 3 for food, a 4.5 for supplies, and a 4.5 for skills. The Gorons live at the base of Death Mountain, which keeps the city a perfect temperature for Gorons, and their buildings are made of rock, so sturdy and non-flammable. There's one main route in, which would normally be considered quite safe, but there are also multiple ways to get in elsewhere. And I even saw a traveler fighting a monster within eyesight of one of these paths, so not super great. They don't really have a safe room either, since there are monsters that can withstand the unbearable heat that are found in various caves nearby. 2 highlights of the base are that they have multiple healing hot springs nearby, as well as a minecart system to haul things long distances. Those hot springs, plus the various streams running throughout the city, mean they're fine on water, and the Gorons have a diet that consists of one of the only non-perishable food sources of all of our contestants: rocks. Now, you may think that this would automatically give it a 5 out of 5 score, since they can eat their beds after they're done with them, but it's not quite as simple as that. Gorons aren't only limited to one type of rock, but there are definitely ones they like and provide nutrition, and ones that they refuse to eat. Like in Ocarina of Time, the Gorons are starving because they've gotten so used to eating rocks from Dodongo's cavern that they would rather starve than eat other rocks when the cavern gets closed off. So asking a Goron to eat part of a random wall would be like telling a human to just eat grass when they're super hungry. It doesn't work like that. However, their supply of edible rocks is still pretty dang extensive. You do get half a point off because their favorite rock roast is straight up said to be low stock, high demand, and located in dangerous monster-infested places quite a distance from the city itself. All in all though, if you're a Goron, you're pretty well stocked up for quite a long period of time. If you're visiting Hylian, Godspeed. Supplies, however, are a bit hard to quantify in the Goron community. The shopkeeper admits to having to import everything, and when you look around their homes, it's pretty barren. But the thing is, how much do Gorons need? They sleep on rock beds, eat rocks on rock tables with rock flowers, and they do have games. So since they have the necessities plus weapons, I don't think the things they import are actually that important. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it covers all the basic needs. As far as skills go, the Gorons have 2 village blacksmiths, a chef, miners, and can fight and defend themselves. They are able to travel very fast by rolling and make functioning minecart systems for traveling long distances. However, Gorons also have qualities that hinder survival. They aren't very smart, are pretty gullible, and are gluttonous, meaning they'll burn through their food supply faster than preferable. A good ratio of their population is also older, which is important to consider when thinking about how much each citizen can hold their own. Goron City gets a 3.5 for shelter, a 5 for water, a 4.5 for food, a 4 for supplies, and a 3.5 for skills. And that brings us to the end of the list. So which village is best suited to survive a Hylian apocalypse? Adding all the scores together, Kakariko Village comes out on top with 21.5 points. Gerudo Town comes in second with a strong 21 points, and would have won it had it not been for the massive reproduction issue. And I did say we were looking at long-term survival, so the math does in fact matter. I object! Editing Anna here. Sometimes I wear glasses. But I'm here to say the math ain't mathin'. Here's the thing. When looking back at the gameplay footage, I couldn't justify why I gave Hateno Village a 4 for supplies and Kakariko Village a 4.5. Yes, Hateno Village didn't have weapons, so I think it's a fair score, but their number of quality of life supplies far outweighed Kakariko's. So if it pleases the court, I would like for them to be more balanced and both receive a 4 for supplies. On top of that, I took 2 huge points away from what would have been a perfect skill score for the Gerudos for the reproduction issue. But picture this. A group of ripped statuesque women ride sand seals across the desert and kick a bunch of monsters' asses to show up to a town and request that a few men make passionate love to them so they can further the warrior line. Do you really think these dudes who have been cooped up, bored out of their minds, and surviving on eating lizards are gonna say no? The Gerudos could even strike a deal with a neighboring town to do it every 10 years, maybe in exchange for grilled meat, and they would still be good population-wise. For this reason, I would like to reward half a point back to the Gerudos, who are still being penalized, might I add. That would mean that in a shocking turn of events, Kakariko Village and Gerudo Town switch scores and Gerudo Town comes out on top. But which of these towns would you most like to bunker down in? Leave it in the comments. If I'm being honest, I'd still take Gerudo Town in a heartbeat. The spa days override eating sand seal meat and stolen goods for me. And I would very much like to be surrounded by these strong women. Thank you very much. Patrons and members saw this video first, and my patrons actually voted for this video to happen. So if you also want a hand in shaping the channel, considering hopping aboard the patron train. And also join me on Twitch Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays to chat and play games with me. It's a good time. I'm gonna go do some crunches to try desperately to fit in with the Gerudos, but I'll see you on the next one. Bye!
Goombanna is the wonder why she didn't come to play. Gaming vids that'll make you laugh and think and put them on replay. Intelligent, kind and funny, her community's #1. Stick around and kick your feet up. Goombanna has just begun.